أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My two colleagues, Professor Muhammad Sani Umar and my very good friend, Dr. Awalu Anwar, have spoken a lot on three topics that are overlapping actually. And as the first speaker has said, I will do my best to follow the historical line, even though, they too are historians. But what I'm going to do is to look at, concentrate on Borno, because that is where I've spent the greater part of my life. And coming from Yobe State, I'm an indigenous of Yobe, Unguru, and spent the greater part of my useful life in Maiduguri. So the focus of my paper will be largely on the Northeast, and particularly Kanem, Borno history, with particular reference to Islamic manuscript heritage. So the actual paper is actually divided in 8 parts. Besides the introduction, I have a section dealing with Nigeria's Islamic manuscript heritage in historical perspective. And there's a section on scope and categories of Islamic manuscript heritage in Nigeria. Then the location of the manuscript, Islamic manuscript heritage in Nigeria, then preservation of Nigeria's Islamic manuscript heritage, and problems associated with that process. Last but not, second to the last, importance of Nigeria's Islamic manuscript heritage. And lastly is the conclusion. In the introduction, I've tried to emphasize the importance of the Nigerian area, largely in terms of the convergence of ideas, technologies, peoples. Because from whichever angle you look at Nigeria, it is a melting pot, in the sense that it has a lot of linguistic groups, and this clearly explained in how Arabic has been adopted, and then the Ajami created out of Arabic, or Arabic used to create the script, and then use it in the local languages. A lot of them where you have a substantial number of Islamized groups, such as the Hausa, Kanuri, Yoruba, Nupe, and other groups that use the Ajami. So Nigeria is not only a receiver, but it is also a giver of ideas, technologies, as well as peoples. As Professor Amidu Sani said yesterday, we have seen how people of Nigerian or West African origins have contributed to the development of other parts of the world, especially the New World, North and South America. So one can comfortably say that Nigeria is a synthesis of African history, in the sense that it is home to a number of empires, kingdoms, states in the pre-colonial period, such as the Kanem-Borno Empire, the Hausa states that subsequently metamorphosed into Sokoto Caliphate, or emirates of the Sokoto Caliphate, Oyo Empire, Nupe Kingdom, Igala Kingdom, and several other kingdoms as chiefdoms in Nigeria. So present-day Nigeria is undoubtedly an inheritor of important Islamic manuscript heritage from these polities, that is the empires, the kingdoms, the chiefdoms I've mentioned, especially as typified or symbolized by the written culture of the former Kanem Borno kingdom, the Sokoto Caliphate, Oyo Empire, Nupe kingdom, etc., etc. And there exists in Nigeria great historical centers of Islamic learning, dating back to the 11th century. And over the centuries, the local scholars spread across these centers of learning have nurtured the production of very rich intellectual Islamic manuscript heritage. And some of these major centers of Islamic manuscript heritage, Endoto, which is no longer in existence, I'm sure it has disappeared, in Zamfara State, Gobir in Sokoto, Gwandu in Kebbi, Madabo Ward, as my very good friend has said, in Kano, and other wards in Kano, Kukawa in Borno, Gazargomu in present-day Yobe, Zaria in present-day Kaduna State. So today, one may find Islamic manuscripts in several Nigerian cities, towns, and villages. Recently, one of my students, Dr. Osman Alamin and Musa from Arewa House were in Kano, where they traced a Quran dating back to almost 300 years in Nambata local government. And they're in the process of working on that document. So next, I looked at the Islamic manuscript in historical perspective, looking at the introduction of Islam, first in Kanem Borno in the 11th century, Hausa land, 14th century, Oyo, either 16th or 17th century. And with that, we have the establishment of Islamic education, which is in two parts, Quranic or elementary school system, and then the madrasa or advanced or higher school. And scholars from other parts of the world, particularly Hijaz, Egypt, the Maghreb, other parts of West Africa like Timbuktu, brought to the Nigerian area new books and new information from the 15th century onwards. And the mastery of Arabic enabled the creation of Ajami in a number of Nigerian languages. And production of Arabic manuscript in Kano, Borno, and Hausaland began earlier than either the 15th or before the 15th century or around the 15th century. And then in terms of the scope, we can categorize them into two. First, foreign Islamic manuscripts which were brought into the country by visiting scholars, clerics who came to Nigeria. Either they came with them or in the course of their stay in Nigeria, they wrote those manuscripts. Then we have the indigenous Islamic manuscript, which can be divided into two, Quranic manuscripts, which range from plain Quranic manuscripts, Ajami, Tarjimo, Quranic manuscripts, Tafsir or Quranic exegesis manuscripts, and annotated Quranic manuscripts. And then the non-Quranic manuscript can also be divided into the following: correspondences, legal or court documents, Friday and Eid sermons, and annotation and notes on foreign and indigenous works. In terms of location, Dr. Awolu Anwar has spoken about some of the most prominent scholars in Kano, especially in the pre-colonial and post-colonial periods. In our own case, especially Borno and Yobe, we have collections in private repositories, like the collection of Sheikh Abul Fatahi, collection of Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Miskin, collection of Sheikh Ibrahim Saleh al-Hussein, collection of Sheikh Wafchama, the former late chief Imam of Maiduguri. And then Unguru also have a collection of Sheikh Muhammad Gibrima, and then the collection of Sheikh Uthman al-Fallati. Then the public repositories, we have outside Borno, we have Waziri Junaid History and Culture Bureau in Sokoto. In Maiduguri, we have Center for Trans-Saharan Studies, University of Maiduguri. Also have a Center for Arabic Documentation, University of Ibadan. We have Arewa House in Kaduna, Northern History Research Scheme in Abu Zaria, Jos Museum, National Archives Ibadan, and National Archives Kaduna. Then, in terms of preservation of the manuscript, in the pre-colonial period, the scholars themselves and Muslim leaders were the custodians of those manuscripts, and they took very good care of them. During the colonial period, the scholars, as well as the colonial government, took care of the manuscripts. Then in post-colonial period, we have individual scholars looking after the manuscript, as well as the government officials, such as in archives, the ones that I've just mentioned, museums, bureaus, and research institutes and centers. Then regarding the problems, we have lack of seriousness from the government. I'm sorry to say that. And then we have reluctance and refusal of scholars to part with their collections or make their collections available to researchers and government officials, probably for obvious reasons. They're very rich treasures and they don't want to part with them. Then we have poor handling of Islamic manuscripts in archives, museums, bureaus, and research institutes and centers. Professor Amidu Sani showed what is the position of the great Center for Arabic Documentation in the Institute of African Studies, University of Ibadan. We all know, those of us who do research in archives, we know the state of our archives, our libraries. We don't have this maintenance culture. I'm sorry to say that. Then we have limited financial and material support from the government. And then in terms of their importance, important in teaching and learning this manuscript, they enhance the present state of all branches of knowledge, and it is an authentic source of reliable information on intellectual, socio-economic, cultural, and political history of the peoples of Nigeria. And they can be used in the construction of the region's calligraphic and art history. They can assist in understanding the level of competence in Quranic studies in the region. And then the region's leatherwork, paper type, and ink chemistry can also be tapped from the Quranic manuscript heritage. And they also expose the Ajami writing systems. They reveal the text, curriculum, bestsellers, and reading culture. And then legal manuscript heritage depicts the legal erudition of the judges, the nature of social, civil, criminal, legal conflicts and judgment. Then in conclusion, I've said that the paper has explored the historical evolution of Nigeria's Islamic manuscript heritage, including their scope, classification, category, location, preservation. And then it is providing the following recommendations. Develop easy ways of retrieving the manuscripts which are still in the hands of individual scholars and families. Use modern technology in preserving them properly. Provide suitable environment for the preservation of these manuscripts, and researchers, users, and visitors of these manuscripts should handle them with utmost care, providing maximum security to these manuscripts because they are very, very vital, very rich treasures, and enlighten the public and policymakers about the importance of manuscript heritage. Thank you very much, and may God bless. Wassalam.
تابعونا على موقع مؤسسة محمد السادس للعلماء الأفارقة وعلى شبكاتها الاجتماعية.